Hi, I'm Erik the Travel Guy. You know, it's been said you can live in any city in America, but this city is the only city that lives in you. On today's edition of Beyond Your Backyard, we're exploring New Orleans, Louisiana.
My name is Erik Hastings. Yeah, that's me. And for as long as I can remember, I've always loved to travel. And I still do today. Airlines, hotels, cruises, new places, delicious food, I love all of it. And that's why I've been traveling the world professionally for more than a decade. But what troubles me these days is that Americans are leaving paid vacation time on the table each year at an alarming rate. Well, I want to help fix that. So please consider this a personal invitation to join me each week on my mission to get you traveling more than ever before. Because while the world is a pretty big place to explore, your next vacation is waiting to be discovered not just around the globe, but perhaps just around the corner. Let me introduce you to the places, people, and secrets I've discovered that remind me just how exciting it is to be alive, and hopefully will inspire you to get out of the house and into your next great adventure. I am Erik the Travel Guy, and this is Beyond Your Backyard.
Thank you for joining us and welcome. Now, some of you may be familiar with New Orleans for its Mardi Gras, for its music scene and muffaletta, all definitely big parts of the Big Easy, which we will cover. But I have to admit to you right up front, I have been having a love affair with this town for more than a decade. For its neighborhoods, for its culture, even the air that I breathe seems to just fill my soul. So on today's episode, we will confirm that this is a legendary food and drink town. It's also a live music town and a non-stop celebration town. You may also be surprised to learn this is a culture town, a family town, and a town worthy of what I call nature immersion. Let's get started.
So where exactly are we? Well, here's our trusty map. New Orleans is located in southeastern Louisiana and occupies both sides of the Mississippi River. Because of its low-lying topographic location, New Orleans is home to bayous and recreational areas perfect for outdoor enthusiasts. The city's oldest section and heart of downtown, the French Quarter, is located on the river's north side. Louisiana was originally settled by the French in 1718 and then switched hands to Spanish rule, only to come back again to the French, albeit briefly, before the United States finally acquired it in the very famous Louisiana Purchase in 1803. This volleying of the city back and forth from different cultures influenced the architectural and overall style of New Orleans, the French Quarter specifically. This area is now a registered historic landmark and home to Bourbon Street and the very heart of the city. And the perfect way to start the day is with a beignet.
Did you know 2018 marks the 300th birthday for New Orleans? Well, we'll get to that in just a moment. But our first stop this morning is Café du Monde. We're going to have café au lait and those world-famous beignets. Thank you. Now, a beignet, which is a noun, it's synonymous with the English word fritter, which is essentially a square donut covered in powdered sugar. Now, here's a tip. If you want to avoid a powdered sugar catastrophe, hold your breath when you take a bite.
The original Café du Monde coffee stand opened in 1862 in the New Orleans French Market. Today, the cafe is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and closes only on Christmas Day. On a relevant cultural note, the beignet was named the official state donut of Louisiana in 1986.
Is it time? Is it time? Uh-huh. Yeah. Some say beignet. I say beignets. Yes. Oh, I said it. Oh, my God.
Hopped up on caffeine and sugar, I continued my day with a few cultural hotspots. Visitor favorites include the Ogden Museum of Southern Art, Contemporary Arts Center of New Orleans, the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas, and the Louisiana Children's Museum. Honestly, there are so many museums, I suggest doing a little research before you arrive.
One of the recurring themes here on Beyond Your Backyard is the telling of the story of America. And there's no better place than right here in New Orleans. This is the National World War II Museum. And when you step inside, you'll learn more about why this war was fought, how it was fought, and why it's still relevant today.
The stories of the brave unfold before your very eyes in the European Theater and Pacific Theater exhibitions. The complex is massive and still growing. Interactive galleries, educational programs and lectures, and historical accounts of World War II are approachably presented in an extremely powerful tribute to the thousands of lives affected by this historic conflict. By visiting the museum, I was reminded that the arts and performing arts are alive and thriving in the Crescent City.
Welcome to New Orleans.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You know, this is an art town. Why?
Some here say it's in the water,
Yeah.
in the Mississippi River.
Right.
But I think what is incredible about New Orleans is that the old stuff survives and continues, and it's a part of the contemporary cultural scene. And then you have young people who come in and do totally original, creative things that either bounce off the New Orleans cultural history or they're brand new. You have kids who come in here from Brooklyn, and next thing you know, these kids are in second line parades. They've got their Mardi Gras regalia on, and their work starts to be influenced by the celebratory spirit of the city. I think the celebratory thing, the Mardi Gras, the Carnival, Jazz Fest, all of that is one of the really most critical factors in shaping the culture of the city.
Because you can't walk around this town without feeling this sense of history, but this sense of present energy.
The history survived partially, ironically, because after the Civil War, the city grew very slowly. So you didn't have a lot of raising of the old stuff and shooting up skyscrapers, which is why a lot of us are here. We like the old stuff. We like the old houses, we like the human scale, we like the green, all that.
Right.
At the same time, we have visual, performing, theater, music, architecture, all of the creative industries are a part of our life here.
What should they see while they're here as it pertains to art?
Right. Every neighborhood in the city has an art center. So the minute you get out of the French Quarter, and please do, because quite frankly, the French Quarter has gotten a little overheated. In Central City, Magazine Street, Ferret Street, St. Claude Street, Araby, West Bank, we have lots of art going on. Galleries, museums, artists' studios and homes are often open. So my answer to you in a way is the neighborhoods. Now, if you're here on a Sunday, there's going to be a second line parade right outside your Airbnb. There's going to be some kind of parade to go to. And in fact, you can go online and see where they are. The galleries are on St. Claude Avenue, and they're on Julia Street.
These neighborhoods are distinct, and there's so much going on within them.
They're also tight next to each other because the city for a long time could not spread out because there was so much water around us. So people lived much closer. We're a salt and pepper city as opposed to having that black neighborhood, that white neighborhood.
Right.
We're all mixed up. The kids are all playing together. So it's very much compact.
Yeah.
That you can get just about anywhere in about 10, 15 minutes. So, I mean, that's a beautiful thing to be able to see so much diversity in such a small territory.
Doesn't that bring us closer? Once we learn more about the history, and once we learn more about this culture and that culture, we learn that we're all kind of people.
Again, in New Orleans, you go to a parade, and we're all out there together.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is that you can walk into any museum and find something that will speak to you. The point is, you got to get in the front door, because if you don't go, there's no chance of it. When you read it in a book, and when you read it in the in-flight magazine, it's not the same as going and standing next to it and looking at it.
So, Eric, I think part of the problem, as you may know, is that arts education is harder to come by in the schools right now because they're so focused on the exams and making sure everybody has a certain capabilities, that they're not taking kids out to the museums. When I grew up, I went to all the museums all over the city of New York. I became an art person.
Well,
and so I think that people who don't get that experience, they are intimidated. And I work real hard at saying, don't be intimidated. You know, and in fact, I try to get people to buy art. And I say, listen, that suit you have on costs more than a work of art by a young person. Buy art.
Well, and yes, we can quickly point to the school system and I'm happy to do so. But at the end of the day, isn't that our job as parents to get them out there? To get these kids, take them to the museum after school one day, take them into these neighborhoods and show them the different architecture and the art that's going on. Isn't that supposed to be our job too?
Yes, it is. But I will tell you, there are people, not just in New Orleans, but everywhere, who have literally never set foot in a museum. So how are they going to tell their kids about it if they've never been there?
And isn't that, Jean, isn't that the dirty little secret that maybe we're going to expose today to say, it's okay, you don't have to know anything.
It's fun.
Just go.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, it is absolutely fun. You're going to see so many different crazy things in a museum. Some of them are going to make sense and resonate for you, and some of them are going to say what? But it's all exposure to something different, and that's fun.
That's fun. Jane, thank you for this.
I think a theme is emerging here. New Orleans is so much more than Bourbon Street and the French Quarter. But it was time for lunch.
As far as I'm concerned, the absolute best and, of course, home of the original muffaletta is Central Grocery in the Quarter. Wait till you see this sandwich. Oh, my gosh.
Since 1906, when Sicilian immigrant Salvatore Lupo set up shop, Central Grocery on Decatur Street has been astounding hungry diners with a very simple yet delicious New Orleans classic. They've always made their muffalettas with meat sliced in-house, locally baked homemade bread, and their family's Italian olive salad.
Whew, I am already on sensory overload, and so will you. So for you first-timers, I definitely suggest taking a guided walking tour. Walking tours, bus tours, carriages, just pick one that suits you and get yourself acclimated. New Orleans offers tours by location or neighborhood or area of personal interest, such as music, food, or cemeteries. I'm all for quiet reflection, but I also like a little danger. That's why we've stepped off the beaten path to the marshy lowlands for a swamp tour. It's time to meet some alligators, but first, let's meet the captain. I'm so excited to go on one of these because it's my first time, and a lot of people watching, maybe they've never been on one of these. What should they expect to see when they're out there?
First thing you're gonna see is the swamp, because you're there.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have possibility of seeing snakes, frogs, turtles, and then potentially alligators,
Yeah.
a lot of different bird species.
If we want to sound intelligent, we say we're going to the swamp, right?
Yes.
What's the difference between a bayou and a swamp? There's different types of water around. Help us out a little bit there.
So a swamp is going to be mainly just the forest that floods. And in the particular area we're located in, it stays flooded most of the whole year. You go a little north of here, and it'll be like any other river system where they have actual shorelines year-round, and then when the higher stages come, then it floods in. Your bayou is right behind us. It's a smaller tributary to the river system, or a lake. If you go just a little farther south of where we're located, it opens into a marsh.
Doesn't that have part salt water? Because this is fresh water, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so help out. Where are we going to encounter the salt water?
So if you just travel maybe a half of a mile south of where we're located, you start to have a slight tidal movement from the lake into the river, and then it transitions your tall trees to small, short trees and mostly grasses.
But from what I understand, there's something very, not surreal, but very calming about being out on this water. How do you describe that feeling?
It is, just to be in nature.
Yeah.
Even like just to get on the boat, kill the motor, and just listen.
And listen.
You can hear the birds, hear the bugs, you know, and just the wind in the trees, you know, just being outdoors is relaxing.
And we're going to see wild boar, is that true?
We have them in the drier parts of our swamp. We'll see on tour. We'll see actual ones that occasionally that are completely 100% wild. We have an area that we view them, and they're so used to seeing us daily that they're relatively tame to our tour boats. And they're in an area that they don't get hunted. They come right up to approach us real close.
Really?
Most people are going to come out here, see the alligators. Yeah, they get excited to get on the boat.
Because kids can get on this too. They're wearing a life jacket. We're in passenger boats, right? These are passenger vessels,
Yes.
correct? So they're very safe. And this isn't an airboat. That's something different.
Yeah, set up differently.
The whole big setup is different. But we're in passenger boats. And what happens if somebody falls overboard?
The river that we tour in, I mean, no one's ever fallen off the boat.
Right.
But, I mean, legitimately, you could fall off the boat, and if you're an adult, you could probably stand up.
Got it.
Most of the river we tour in is pretty shallow.
Got it.
But, I mean, there's deeper areas. You know, so we do have life jackets for every person on the boat.
Got
you
it.
know, regardless if you was to take one before you get on the boat, because we have more comfortable vests that you could pick up before you get on the boat, and then we have the actual Coast Guard mandated life jackets for the boat.
really, how long do we need to allocate for this?
Our tour itself is average of about 1 hour 45 minutes on the water.
And you're getting close. You're certainly getting very close to these animals.
Yeah, they approach us. I mean, even the alligators are afraid of people. However people feel about them, they're afraid of people.
Yeah.
And they normally, you know, don't approach boats, but they see us every day, just like other animals. We're not there to harm them,
right.
You know, and they get used to us, and they come right up to the side of the boats, and we get to see them up close.
Captain, thank you, man.
Nice to meet you.
I appreciate it. Good to meet you.
After wrestling those beasts, I ventured to the city's north side for some additional quiet time. Did you know New Orleans is home to a 1,300-acre park that's one of the oldest in our nation's history? City Park was founded in 1854 and has been delighting visitors and locals alike ever since.
In most cases, you eat to live. Well, not here. You see, in New Orleans, you live to eat. But why? I can explain.
The descendants of the original French and Spanish settlers, and also the native-born people, are known as Creole. And the Creole, with their multicultural backgrounds, have influenced the foods that New Orleans is so deliciously famous for. Gumbo, jambalaya, etouffees, and red beans and rice often take center stage on most restaurant menus. Brennan's, for instance, invented one of my favorite desserts, Bananas Foster. Galatoire's is another one of my personal favorites for classic French cuisine with Creole inspiration. Chefs draw largely from the local ingredients and from the rich Gulf waters, so you know the seafood is never fresher or tastier. These chefs are taking the city's history and incorporating it into modern and playful takes on culinary experiences. So I decided to get down to business by heading to DTB on Oak Street with co-owner and chef Carl Schubert, a Louisiana native.
You know, some people try to be culinary towns. New Orleans has been one for 300 years.
Yeah.
Why?
It's the DNA. You know, it's the melting pot that is New Orleans, the port city that brought in all these different, you know, ethnicities and cultures combined into one: the Spanish, the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Africans. I mean, it's the last real city that has its own indigenous cuisine, in my opinion, where you're not going to find anything like it outside of this city.
People used to say, oh, you come to New Orleans because you're going to eat French food in New Orleans. The idea of eating Creole, but that wasn't always the case.
No, I mean, I think your restaurants, you know, we call them the Grand Dame restaurants, right? Your Galatoire's, your Antoine's, your Broussard's, places like that, you know, in the French Quarter, those are true French restaurants. I mean, you go in and some of the menus are still in French, part of the menus at least. You know, you get that French bistro kind of experience. You have your amandines and your meunières and all those classic things, potato soufflés, and then you kind of have everybody else in the city, you know? And that's where, you know, those are Creole restaurants too at the same time. I mean, it's definitely by definition Creole. So even what we call French is still a French Creole.
French Creole. There is a line in the sand between Cajun and Creole. What's the difference?
Absolutely. Well, Creole food is kind of city food. It's New Orleans specifically more, whereas Cajun food is definitely more rustic, more outer-lying areas, more, you know, the country food, if you will. So it's usually cheaper ingredients. It's usually living off the land a little bit more. It's influenced by, you know, you have things like andouille and boudin and things of that nature that were influenced by Germans and French kind of coming together and using what they had. You know, typically a lot more pork products, a lot more, you know, maybe things like crawfish. You know, in the city and Creole culture, they would have never even eaten crawfish, you know, typically, because that's more of a Cajun kind of outer lying of New Orleans kind of thing. So over the years, the influence of Cajun cuisine and Creole cuisine kind of got this mesh where they were both thought of as one thing, but by all means, especially in their origination, they're very different.
But there are tried and true ingredients that you will find pretty much in all of these dishes down here, which gives it an identity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's regional cooking, too. I mean, you know, you think about regional cooking in Italy, regional cooking in France, where what they're cooking in Lyon is different from Paris, is different from Alsace. Well, the same is true of Louisiana. I mean, what we're cooking in Lafayette is different from what they're cooking in Lafourche or Houma or, you know, Baton Rouge and New Orleans especially. New Orleans is a metropolitan city. It's a big city compared to all those other places, right? So we're kind of the city folk here. Right. There's a little bit of flack of that coming from the Cajuns regions around around the rest of the state. But your gumbo from one city is going to differ from the gumbo to another city, and that's kind of like what you'll find like pasta dishes in Italy and things like that. And then you come into the Creole part. Creole really is just melting pot cooking, and then their use of tomato is a big deal too. You're not going to find, you know, if you're in Lafayette and you put tomato in your jambalaya, you might as well just leave right then and there, right? Because that's not, it's not how they do it. Now in New Orleans, there's tomato in gumbo, there's tomato in jambalaya typically, and that's where that Creole, that kind of more Spanish, Italian kind of influence comes in.
I'm glad you mentioned sort of one-pot cooking, because today we're going to make something all in one pan, right?
Absolutely.
So what are we going to make today?
So today we're making it's actually a festival dish. It's called crawfish Monica.
Okay.
So it was really created for, or popularized at Jazz Festival. Okay. So this is truly Creole in concept, I would say, and then Cajun in ingredients, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yes.
Because it is a pasta-based dish. Here we're making fresh pasta, we're making it in-house, which, you know, store-bought and dried is absolutely fine, and sometimes I prefer dried pastas. But we're using Louisiana crawfish tails from Bourbon Street, Louisiana, Cajun country all the way. We're using, of course, our Trinity, which is, you know, a staple of Cajun cooking and Creole cooking. We're using a little bit of tomato, which again goes to the Creole side of things. And we're doing that one-pot cast iron, which is a little bit more on the Cajun side. So, you know, we're playing, and we even have a little Korean chili paste in there. So it's like,
that's crazy. What?
So again, that's where we talk about kind of the evolution of where New Orleans is now, and it's accepting of other cultures and other ingredients. And that's what we do here at DTB is, you know, there's no rules to really what we do. People ask, what kind of food are you? Well, we call ourselves modern Cajun, okay? But, you know, at the same time, it's just good food.
First-time visitor coming down, or somebody who hasn't been down in quite some time, what would you recommend in terms of getting out of the Quarter? Of course, there's so much in the French Quarter to do. Yeah. What would you recommend?
Like traveling across the river, which some people think like that's crazy to go to the West Bank, right? It's 10 minutes away from downtown New Orleans. There's some of the best Vietnamese food in the country over there. Pho and banh mi's and things like that by these Vietnamese that have been here for generations and generations. Get yourself a po' boy shrimp, you know, go to Dom Lisi's, go to you know, wherever it is that you like to go, and then go get yourself a banh mi, which is a Vietnamese po' boy. The best three bakeries, in my opinion, that make French bread are Italian, German, and Vietnamese bakeries, right? So that's like New Orleans in a nutshell right there. Food and music, cocktails in moderation. That's what we're all about, living life.
How long did this take in the kitchen? We weren't there that long.
I mean, you know, start to finish, 10 minutes. Yeah. You know, if you're making your own pasta from scratch, that takes an hour, 2. Sure. But again, you get the family involved, you get the kids involved, you make a big mess. We're using dried pasta, which again, I love. That's gonna be another 15 minutes or so, but you can, while you're doing that, you can be cooking your vegetables and your sauce and all that. And I mean, start to finish, 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops.
I wish we had the Smell-O-Vision cameras with us, because I can smell, we have to try it. We have to get the perfect bite.
So a little bit of tomato. Of course, there's tons of plentiful crawfish in there. That beautiful fresh pasta. There's no shortage of green onions and parsley and Parmesan and all that. So
the twirl, you gotta have the twirl.
Gotta get a little twirl, and if you can twirl it, that means that the pasta was made right. So
cheers, man.
Cheers.
This looks amazing. Cheers. Oh, you're kidding me. I don't know how you managed to have this dish be a little sweet without any sweet ingredients. How did you do that? That's like magic.
You know, the tomatoes are sweet.
Right.
We use a little bit of that Korean chili paste that has a slight sweetness to it. Oh. But then the heat kind of balances with the sweet, right? There's an umami from the cheese. There's a lot of crawfish in it. They're very good for you. You know, it's good cholesterol, not high in fat, great protein. What I do is I close my eyes and I hear jazz playing. This is a Jazz Fest dish. It reminds me of being out there during festival season. And
we've got to finish this immediately.
Absolutely.
We're going to move on.
It wasn't hard to believe the time just slipped away while the chef and I spent the afternoon in the kitchen and behind the bar for a signature cocktail. The sun dipped below the horizon and the party continued on one of the most famous streets in the world.
This is it, people. You don't even need me to tell you where we are. But if you don't know, this is Bourbon Street.
The iconic bars, eclectic restaurants, jazz music all around, and the visceral, gritty vibe all give Bourbon Street its unique appeal and must-experience status. This 13-block stretch in the French Quarter stands out particularly for its brilliant blending of architectural styles, both Spanish and French, from so long ago, with modern touches everywhere. Whether you're here for the famous and outlandish Mardi Gras Festival or any other day of the year, New Orleans delivers a fun party atmosphere and an unforgettable experience each time.
We love New Orleans! It's time. It's time. Can't be stopped. It's time. It is happening. It is happening right behind me. It's happening right in front of me. It's going to happen to you when you come to New Orleans and feel the proverbial heartbeat in every neighborhood. This is Frenchman Street.
And that heartbeat is found in the rhythm of the music. Listening and feeling jazz in its birthplace, crooning along to the blues, or whatever your musical preference, the electric music scene of New Orleans has a long history that's created and continued to inspire the rhythms of its culture today. So be safe, be smart, imbibe responsibly, and have fun.
For 300 years, visitors from all over the world have been coming to New Orleans for food, for music, for fun, all of which can be found on almost every street corner. I'm Erik the Travel Guy. Thank you for exploring beyond your backyard.
Erik the Travel Guy!
That was exhausting. We met the dance lady.
Was niet voor niks gehad, dus dit was niet. Ik wist net met jou. Zit in de fight in de waterval.
I'm gonna drop it. Now, a beignet is